Hey everybody, and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not News, your favorite podcast about fake news. I'm Beth.
And I'm Kelly.
Hey Kelly, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm surrounded by my animals, so if anyone hears any weird sounds, it's just a dog or a cat.
No problem. I also have my two monsters here, aka my children. They are not sitting quietly at my feet though, so if you hear any noises here, help.
I'll send the police. I'll hear it before they do.
Right. So, Kelly, last episode, we started this new series where we're doing a family tree of fake news makers.
I know. It was pretty exciting. I was really happy with the last episode.
Nice.
I learned a lot.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, we're going to continue part 2 today, and we're going to keep going in this storytelling option here where you tell me about somebody and I tell you about somebody. So
I've got someone good. How about you?
Oh, he's terrible.
Yeah, mine's pretty terrible too. I can't wait to tell you how awful this person is.
So last time, let's see, you did the John Birch Society and I did the Koch brothers, and those are some pretty heavy branches on this fake news family tree.
Yeah. There's some pretty deep roots right there. Yeah.
So this episode, we decided to go over to the radio branch. So, and I think, Kelly, it just works better for you to go first again, just because your person has such a big branch on this tree.
Yeah, unfortunately. He's a big, heavy, racist, dirty branch. The grossest branch on the tree.
So let's jump in. Let's do it. I want to hear all about this person.
Let's do it. So my person is, of course, the dirty, filthy, rotten liar, Rush Limbaugh. I know. Gross. We talked a lot about Rush Limbaugh during our review of the movie The Brainwashing of My Dad that we did a few episodes ago. Right. Yeah. So because I talked a lot about his history during that episode, I'm going to just give a brief refresher, but really I want to focus on some very big key issues that Rush has sort of propagated about his own brand. Okay. And then get into some of the crazier lies that he has told or grosser things he has said that have made their way into sort of the right-wing media industry.
I just want to remind you that we do try to keep this podcast under an hour.
I'll do my best.
Okay.
I will try to remind myself that I also don't want to have to repeat all the things that Rush Limbaugh has said.
Right.
So Rush Limbaugh, as you remember, was one of the very first national players in the right-wing news platform. Yes. He was already kind of famous from his radio show before he became nationally syndicated. He has this confident tone of voice that's remarked on several times as being a reason why people listen to him and sort of respond to him, because he sounds like he knows what he's talking about, even when he's completely full of it.
I don't hear that when I hear his voice, but okay.
So I think that there is nothing he won't lie about. He's lied about everything from secondhand smoking to climate change, anything to do with Obama or Clinton, our newest House reps, illegal immigrants, migrants, anything and everything. He will lie about it if it's on his side.
Doesn't he also like to lie about which prescriptions his doctor wrote him?
He does.
Okay.
He does. And we'll even get into a little bit of that.
Okay.
But needless to say, there's a reason why multiple books have been written about the lies that Rush Limbaugh tells. One of the issues with Rush Limbaugh is that he is very influential. And that's not just because of his listener base, it's also because of his close friendships with lawmakers. He is very influential among members of Congress, and he's even close friends with Clarence Thomas, who performed his third marriage ceremony at his home.
Right, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, we talked about that a little because I did mention that Thomas actually says that not only does he listen to Rush Limbaugh, but he's claimed to never listen or read mainstream news like the New York Times or the Washington Post.
Right. And that's super awesome.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yes.
He's also got these multi-million-dollar sponsorship deals with right-wing think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, which is funded by dun, 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 the Koch brothers.
What?
I know. Crazy. This is why we call it a fake news tree, because they're all fucking connected.
That's true.
So, one of the things that I feel like Rush has lied about more than anything else is how influential he actually is. Yes, he has friends who are in conservative politics, but if you go to Rush's Wikipedia page, and you go to the Wikipedia page of like who has the most listeners for talk radio, because that's a topic on Wikipedia. I found out when I was doing research for this. You'll see that Rush Limbaugh claims that he has 13.5 million listeners a week, which is a shit ton of listeners, right?
Right.
However, if you dig deeper in Wikipedia, like I did, and I went to check the sources on this, you'll find that that data is provided by Talkers Magazine. However, that magazine is a conservative online source that provides no data point whatsoever for these numbers. I know because I went to look for them and they weren't there, Beth.
Is this is it the same people who judge the crowd size for like inaugurations for Donald Trump?
You know what? I think that they are strictly based on conservative talk radio. And like, that's what their topics all seem to be about. Right. So obviously, because I found it rather odd that on the list that was on Wikipedia, Howard Stern wasn't on there. And I remember thinking, how can Howard Stern not be on here? He gets a shit ton of listeners every week. There's no way he can't be on this list.
Right.
But they were like, no, Rush has been at the very top since the very beginning of these results being calculated, which is back in 1987. So I was like, okay, well, I just kept digging. And eventually, what I found was a Business Insider article from 2012, and they revealed that his numbers may be much, much lower, as the only place where you can get his syndication numbers is Premier Radio Networks. Well, Premier Radio Networks is the company that produces and syndicates his show.
Right.
Why would they ever, as they're promoting his show to advertisers and to listeners, why would they give an accurate number? They have no impetus to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what an industry insider said in this article is anytime you hear a number like that, you should take it down to a degree of 10. So if they're saying he has 13.5 million listeners a week, he probably has something closer to 1.3 to 1.5 million listeners a week.
Okay.
So I was like, God, but that seems really low, right?
Right.
That doesn't seem like it should be right if he's claiming to have the number one talk radio show in the entire history of radio shows that's ever been existing in the entire face of the planet, right? And he has all this money. So I did a little bit more digging and I went to Facebook and I went to his Facebook page. But his Facebook page only has 2.3 million followers on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
If he has 13.5 million listeners, and I know that old people have taken over Facebook.
Right.
I mean, it is filled with bots and old people. Young people don't even exist on there anymore. Sorry, they just don't. You know, if that many people are on Facebook that should be his demographic, why does he only have 2.3 million followers? And you know that there are people, like I have friends who follow Trump on Facebook, even though they're not fans.
Right.
Just to see what kind of crazy stuff he says. So, right. I mean, we can't guarantee that all 2.3 are...
They're not all fans.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Right. I do wonder, because I have been forced to listen to Rush Limbaugh as hold music for certain places.
Oh, I can see that.
I wonder if part of that number is literally they're counting the people that are forced to listen to him on hold.
Could be.
That could increase his numbers quite a bit.
Sure.
You know? It didn't matter that I was screaming at the phone the whole time.
No, it never does. It never does.
Because it's purgatory.
It's sort of like when they would tell you the same thing about Fox News, but Fox News would be blasted at every airport, and you're like, why?
Right.
Why? And none of us here want to listen to this. There's certainly no one in Los Angeles airport who was like, I'm screaming for Fox News.
Well, I'm sure there's some fans.
There are some.
Going through Los Angeles.
I'm sure.
Okay.
So
we're fair and balanced here. I can't believe it's not news.
So I didn't stop at Facebook, but Facebook has the largest number of followers because I, of course, went to Twitter.
Right.
And his Twitter account has actually been inactive for 3 years. I did make sure I went to the real Rush Limbaugh account, and it's got 313,000 followers. You would think, again, if you have 13 million followers, which is the lowest number he's ever been quoted as saying, I'm not using his highest numbers.
Okay.
Because some of them say 15 to 20.
Okay.
But either way, even if you've been inactive for 3 years, 313,000 followers on Twitter is a very small number for someone who is that popular.
Right.
Then, of course, I turned to Reddit because, the Donald on Reddit is very popular. And I thought, well, maybe there might be something here, right?
Right.
Now, he's got 637 members on the Rush Limbaugh Reddit sub-account.
So here's my question for you, Kelly.
Yeah.
What about, did you go to 4chan or 8chan? Because you really have to go to the really crappy places on the internet.
I didn't go there because I don't want to subject my computer to whatever is going to come out of 4 or 8chan, nor did I really want to subject myself. And I already felt like, these are the 3 biggest that I would think he would be on. And I really I was stumped as to not even 1,000 people on Reddit, not even 500,000 people on Twitter, and less than 2.5 million on Facebook. Are we really talking about someone who is as influential as they claim to be in order to get all the money that he gets from advertisers?
Right.
I mean, I'm just wondering, like, more people are watching Dancing with the Stars right now with Sean Spicer than are actually listening to Rush Limbaugh. Well, and you can vote and you can call and you can make him go home.
Well, first of all, I hope that that's true. I don't want lots of people to listen to Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
But I definitely think he has affected our culture,
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think he has influenced culture, but I wonder if he sometimes has influenced our culture in the same way that Alex Jones has influenced our culture, where, yes, they have a following, but the following is based on this outrage culture. Like, I'll say whatever I can say to get the outrage, to make people pay attention. So there'll be news stories about me so that people who are on this crazy right side. I think that he once did have some good numbers that were much higher than this. I just think his relevancy has fallen off significantly in the past 10, 15 years.
Can we get him to 0?
I mean...
And would it matter?
I've tried. I don't think we're alone in trying to get him to 0.
Yeah.
But so what I did next, because I was tired of looking at his numbers, was I actually looked at some of the craziest quotes and things that have managed to worm their way into mainstream thought.
Oh, okay.
Based on some stuff that he has said. And I tried to pull it back as far as I could, which I could only really get back to 1988. I'm sure he has said crazier things before then. Right. I have no doubt.
Right.
But some of these are just things that I feel like are so over the top. Some of them are just crazy over the top, and some of them are things that, like, let's not forget that he coined the term feminazi.
Oh.
The feminazi.
Thanks, Red.
That is still used today.
Yeah.
So back in 1988, he said, feminism was established so as to allow unattractive women access to the mainstream of society.
Oh.
Aww.
Is that how that works?
Wasn't that nice? Feminism was created so we could all take part, because who wants to listen to an ugly girl?
Aww.
Nobody. Nobody wants to listen to the uggos. The fuck? Yet Rush Limbaugh has a job. I mean, maybe we should have put a picture just so people know, but I feel like if we put a picture, people would leave.
I think everybody knows I feel like everybody knows what Rush Limbaugh looks like.
With the cigar and everything, right?
Yep.
That's how I picture him.
It's burned into my brain.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So in 1992, which was before the riots in Los Angeles, he said, the NAACP should have riot rehearsal. They should get liquor store and practice robberies. But I mean, it's not like he's racist or anything.
No.
Right?
No.
That's not racist at all. So here's a fun one that I think you'll like.
Okay.
He said, too many whites are getting away with drug use. Too many whites are getting away with drug sales. The answer is to go out and find the ones who are getting away with it, convict them, and send them up the river too. That was in 1995. Would you like to know when he was convicted of drug possession?
Yeah.
It was in April of 2006. Would you like to know how much jail time he served?
Oh, how much? 0. Oh, what?
0 jail time.
How did he get out of that?
We should have sent him right up the river.
Oh my gosh. So many reasons why I would like to have that happen. But yeah.
So in 2011, he proposed that we should take guns out of the hands of liberals, take their typewriters and their keyboards away from them, don't let them anywhere near a gun, and control their speech. You would wipe out 90% of the crime, 85 to 90% of the hate, and 100% of the lies from society.
Wow. He's just an asshole.
I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
He's like, well, then you just take away their First and their Second Amendment rights, and then the society will just be perfect. But then Rush Limbaugh would have no job, right? Because what the fuck would he complain about?
Well, that's the thing I've always thought about him is he's just, it's all just for ratings. It's just bullshit, and he knows it. Like, it's not even that he's I think he believes, he's definitely a conservative. There's no doubt about that. And he thinks that liberals are evil. But I feel like so much of what comes out of his mouth, those kinds of things, are just for ratings and to create a stir. It's not that he's actually believes that.
Right. And I also think when you have 4 hours a day and you have to fill time, eventually you just go on stream of consciousness rants. And sometimes people respond to that. And you can be as crazy as you want to be in some of these, apparently, and just, lose your mind, and people think it's fine.
Yeah.
Some people are always going to be okay with whatever you say because you're the person saying it.
Right.
And I think our culture is going a little bit less that way, at least younger people, but certainly not older people who are just like, yeah, that's what I think too. It's great.
Not the ditto heads.
I don't know if you remember this one. This one is from 2012, so we're getting closer to today's date. But back in 2012, there was a woman named Sandra Fluke who was an advocate for, she wanted to make sure that contraceptives were part of your healthcare plan. Everyone's healthcare plan should include contraceptives. That was her advocacy goal. I feel like that should be just a no-brainer, right?
It's
51% of the country is women, so let's make sure they have contraceptives. Right? So apparently Rush didn't think that was okay. And he said, so Miss Fluke and the rest of you feminazis, here's the deal. If we are going to pay for you to have sex, we want something for it. And I'll tell you what it is. We want you to post the videos online so that we can watch.
Oh, gross.
He's so disgusting.
So disgusting.
At no point is any money coming out of his pocket to pay for anyone else's contraceptive.
Right.
He just has to make it about him.
Right.
So gross.
I really wish, I mean, this isn't about just Rush, but I wish that we could stop talking about birth control as a woman's issue for one thing, and stop talking about it as a sex issue for another, because birth control can be used for lots of different reasons. It's a women's healthcare decision.
That's right.
And they're also starting to come, they've been testing it for years, but, birth control for men. And that needs to be something that's discussed too, because why is it just a women's issue? It's not.
Right.
Men are 49% of the population.
That's right.
And there was a really good tweet a couple months ago. Somebody had said, a man can get 100 people pregnant in a month, whereas a woman can only get pregnant once every 9 months, or I think they said 9 months, because that's the general length of a pregnancy. but pointing out the fact that if a woman gets pregnant, she can only be pregnant once in that 9 months, but a man can go around and keep impregnating people up to his, there's no limit. So why not put men on birth control?
Sure.
Anyway,
absolutely.
That's a little sidebar.
I think that was a really appropriate sidebar. I'm glad you brought it up, because I know that when I first went on birth control, I was 11 and I got put on birth control to regulate my cycle.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was really messed up. When I first started my menstrual cycle, it was very messed up. And that's why a lot of women are on it.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine being I'm sorry, 12-year-old girl, if you want this contraceptive, you're going to have to videotape some porn for us. I mean, who the fuck?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's lots. It's not just about birth control. It's about regulating hormones in a woman's body, and that can be effective through traditional birth control for a lot of women for a lot of different reasons. And just, I've just kind of, especially with a lot of the talk around abortion rights and things that have gone on this past year, I've really come to see it in just some different terms of, it's really just a talk. It's about healthcare for women. It's not even about, it's not about murdering babies or having sex. It's about being able to go to your doctor and make an informed healthcare decision for your body that works for you without somebody else being involved in it.
That's right.
And just, again, sidebar completely, but I'm so frustrated by the fact that there is literally a pill that you can take for an abortion if you want. And there's a doctor in Austria who's mailing them to people in the United States so that they can, and that's how easy an abortion is. There is no reason why every single gynecologist and OB out there can't be administering abortions if needed. And the fact that you have to go to a clinic and go to this specialized doctor for this procedure that is literally as easy as taking a pill. Mm-hmm. Oh, my blood starts to boil. But that's, this is how I get when I talk about Rush Limbaugh. Because I just start getting angry about all the things that they take and make it into the wrong issue.
Right.
And that's propaganda.
Totally yes. So I have one last quote.
Okay.
And it's the most recent quote. And he has obviously said plenty of crappy things in between, before, after all of these things I've said. He says nasty shit on a daily basis. However, this was the latest thing that I've heard him say that I was so mad that I shut my computer and I walked away, because I just thought, you can't sit here and dwell on this. He said about the conditions of the detainees at the border, maybe toilet water is a step up for some of them based on what the left is telling us their homelands are like.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's a gigantic scumbag.
Yes.
And every time I think about this tree, I like to think of all these because they call us all snowflakes. Right. I'd like to think of us snowflakes forming around the tree and like snowflakes during a snowstorm, turning into ice and just snapping that branch right off.
That would be awesome.
Happen to my neighbor's tree. I know it can happen.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully if your research is correct about the numbers, that is, it's hopefully people are at least starting to wake up. And you know what? I will say this, there's been, so we watched that documentary, The Brainwashing of My Dad, and we talked to the Aaron and Dave over at Hear Yourself Think. And we've kind of started to explore this. And I think it's really interesting. So I've been watching the series, The Loudest Voice in the Room, which is really good. I haven't watched every single episode yet, just because I'm almost like, I kind of have had to pace myself on it a little bit, because you're watching it and you're thinking this is really good, but you also want to throw up. And right. For people who don't know, this is based on the book, The Loudest Voice in the Room, about Roger Ailes and how Fox News was started and basically what he did with Fox News. And really, really good. It's on Showtime. And this is not my jam of the week, but I will plug it right now. And then there's that movie coming out, the Bombshell movie, yes. Which again is about like the sexual allegations against Roger Ailes by, like Charlize Theron is playing Megyn Kelly in that movie, and it's about all these allegations that happen. So what struck me is that we're seeing these like movies and these shows that are depicting what happened, and it's not like these are just liberal talk show hosts, or like, this isn't coming from the liberal media. This is literally coming out as entertainment. This story has become so mainstream that they're making entertainment out of it. And I'm really hoping that is going to help people start to turn off from digesting these sources as news sources, when they start to realize the backstory behind them. And if we're talking this much about Fox News and Roger Ailes, like there's been documentaries and books and everything about Rush Limbaugh and the lies and everything, but maybe those things will start to become mainstream too, to where we'll start to see the show about the rise of conservative talk radio that's in such a digestible form for the masses.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of stuff about his life that's absolutely bonkers. I mean, he's a defender of the traditional marriage, yet he's been married 4 times.
Right. He really likes marriage, Kelly.
Yeah. I mean,
he's such a believer in it. He keeps trying it over and over again.
He just keeps trying with younger and younger women to see, it might work this time.
The point that you're missing is that he always marries women.
Yes. Women, obviously. Yeah. But, he's also this fiscal conservative who just came out recently and said that no one's a fiscal conservative anymore, and he doesn't care about the debt ceiling anymore. He doesn't care about the deficit anymore, that was just, that's just a way to get people's tempers up. He's been a drug addict in the past who has done nothing to make sure that, people don't fall into that same exact trap, has no sympathy for people of color who obviously spend time in jail for doing the same exact fucking thing he was doing.
Right.
There's plenty of stuff there that you can kick him while he's down. If you're going to make a movie about him, there's enough entertainment value there that you can definitely get a lot of drama.
Just an FYI, I mean, I know he's a fiscal conservative. I just Googled really quick his net worth, which I had looked up earlier. It's around $500 million. Yeah. And his salary is $84 million a year.
Yeah, he's one of the top radio, he's number 11 for people entertainment, radio entertainers paid. It's a weird list, but he's definitely very, very well compensated.
Right.
Which is, again, it comes from being able to tout those numbers that, it doesn't actually look like he has.
Right.
A lot of people know who he is, but whether or not they're actually listening to him is a whole nother ballgame.
I guess I understand that, like, when you're fiscally conservative, what that means is that you don't think the government should have your money. But I find it odd when, like, fiscally conservative people are so freaking rich. It just seems like it doesn't, like, your values and your actions aren't, like, lining up. Like, but I guess that is, I guess their point is that they just think they should be able to make all the money in the world and not have to ever pay taxes on it. They don't want to share.
I think that's exactly right.
I think they missed kindergarten. Like, they just didn't learn how to share.
Oh, well, I mean, most of the people we've been discussing are white men, and white men just generally aren't that great at sharing. I mean, I hate to generalize,
right?
But if I am to generalize, I'm going to say, out of all the people I know, it is old white women and old white men who are probably the worst at sharing.
I mean, if I think about the list that we made of these people, the only person I can think of that isn't a white man is Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a man, he's just not white, but he's like the only outlier I can really think of. Most of them are white men. There are some outliers. There are some women like Laura Ingraham or, Yeah,
and Laura Ingraham she's not Caucasian, is she? Isn't she from...
I think she is.
I think she might be Cuban.
No, you're thinking of Judge Jeanine. Laura.
Oh, you're right. I am thinking of Judge Jeanine.
Yeah, sorry. Laura Ingraham is very white.
Is she? I say I try not to watch any of them. I just see them occasionally on Twitter.
Yes, I totally understand. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else to wrap up Mr. Limbaugh?
No, I mean, he's gross.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I really have. He is, there is literally not anything I can think of that is sort of a redeeming quality to him. So,
okay.
Yeah, so 0 out of 0 stars. Would not recommend.
Would not recommend. Love it. Okay. Don't rush to see this. No. All right. Well, I wanted to go second because the person I'm telling you about, one of his starts was being a guest on the Rush Limbaugh show.
Dun, dun, dun.
His name is Mark Levine. Now, Mark Levine is interesting in that you may have heard of him and you may not have. And he is a very popular conservative talk radio show host that you literally may have never heard of.
Right.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on him. And I got a lot of my information from the Wikipedia page on him and the links that are on that page. So he began as a guest on conservative talk radio programs. And for many years, he was a frequent contributor to the legal opinions on the Rush Limbaugh show, where Limbaugh referred to him on air as F. Lee Levin, a tongue-in-cheek reference to F. Lee Bailey. And then he also was a contributor to the Sean Hannity show. He eventually got his own radio show in 2002. And then he's been doing the Mark Levin show nationally since 2006. Hannity gave him the nickname of the Great One, which apparently has stuck.
That's weird.
Yeah.
The Great One.
Yes.
Like, why?
Because I'll get into it. So he's very good at arguing his point, and they would bring him on as a counterpoint to liberals and sick him on him like an attack dog.
Okay.
And felt that he always won, so they called him the Great One.
Mm. So
on February 11th, 2016, he signed a 10-year contract extension, which will take his show through 2025, which will be its 19th year. And in 2018, he was inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. Yay.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So in 2016, a study was done to measure incendiary discourse on talk radio and TV, and found that Levin scored the highest on its measure of outrage. So the study looked at 10 prominent radio and television programs known for very, discourse on political matters and They scored the content on the basis of whether it used emotional display, misrepresentative exaggeration, mockery, conflagration, slippery slope, insulting, or obscene language, and other factors. And they found that Levin was the radio host who engaged in the most outrage. And the study found that he utilized outrage speech or behavior at a rate of more than 1 instance per minute.
Does this mean he's rating more than Alex Jones, or does Alex Jones not fit on there because he doesn't really have a radio show?
That's a really good question. I'd have to look and see if he was one of the ones on there, because they just did 10 prominent radio shows and television shows. Okay. So they found that he was one among the popular right-wing radio talk show hosts who helped to legitimize the use of uncivil discourse in American politics and contribute to the erosion of democratic norms. Thanks, Mark.
Way to go, man.
Woo. So to bring it back to episode 1 of this series, during the 2012 election cycle, his show was paid at least $757,000 in sponsorship by the Koch brothers, backed Americans for Prosperity, to run ads for the group.
I'm so shocked.
So after that ended, he started doing ads for the Tea Party Patriots. And in 2014, the Senate Conservatives Fund paid at least $427,000 to Simon & Schuster to purchase copies of one of Levin's books in September and October of 2013. During the same period, Levin frequently promoted the group, which had funded primary challengers of Senate Republicans on his radio show and Facebook page. And he did not disclose that they had made that large purchase of his book. So he is an originalist, okay?
Oh, what does that mean?
So he believes that the Constitution as written was perfect and that we shouldn't move away from that.
Oh, okay.
Like they
like not. Oh, these are the people who don't think we should even go by the amendments. Is that right? Or like not past the first 10 or something?
Yeah, so asked to explain his worldview in a nutshell, Levin described a fallen world, one that had gotten worse and worse since 1776 until it was practically beyond repair. He says, I think that what is threatening society is a lack of appreciation for man's nature. I don't know why when individuals get elected to office or become part of the civil service, they become superior to understanding how the world works and go about remaking it. I'm not into all of this social engineering. I think it's very problematic. And where do we draw the line? If we were unmoored from the Constitution, then what are we onto? What is the blueprint of the left? I want to read it, see if I like it. It doesn't exist. Otherwise, we are just like a hamster on the wheel. And then it says, unlike other right-wing talkers, Levin doesn't veer too far from politics. His Facebook page features his dining room table covered with books, and when people are asked what they like about his show, they invariably mention the Constitution. Levin brings a level of erudition to his work. His books are full of long passages of Locke or Burke or de Tocqueville, and he was introduced on stage at the Value Voters Summit earlier this month as one of the top constitutional lawyers in the nation. So, needless to say, there's some disagreement about this. So, Dahlia Lithwick, the legal correspondent for Slate, wrote of his first book, Men in Black, that it never gets past the AM radio bile to arrive at a cognate analysis. Each of the first 3 chapters ends with the word tyranny. Absent any structure or argument, this book could have just been titled Legal Decisions I Really, Really Hate. Levin follows the lead of lazy pundits everywhere who exonerate activist judges without precisely defining what constitutes one. And then this is a quote from Levin. I am not an entertainer, Levin told me. An entertainer dances and sings and puts on a rubber nose and does whatever they do. I am extremely concerned about the times we live in. I consider them very perilous and I don't hold back much. Now, this all that I've just been reading you is from a Daily Beast article, and it is called, let me go up here. This article was really good. It's a little bit older. It's from 10/19 of 2013 by David Freelander. And it's called Radio's Mark Levine Might Be the Most Powerful Conservative You've Never Heard of. And one of the other things in here that he talks about is this quote from Michelle Bachmann. Do you remember her? Ran for president, Minnesota.
Is she the one who wasn't a witch?
Yeah, she's...
I am not a bitch.
Yeah. Now,
are you sure?
Yeah, are you sure? So this is what she said. He is very influential with members of Congress. He helps us understand issues from a different perspective. So let's let that sink in for a moment. He's helping members of Congress understand the issues from a different perspective.
I mean, you know what? You can ask any crazy guy on the corner their perspective. Right. It doesn't mean you have to stand there and listen to them.
Well, she does. So she said, so when Congress was debating Obamacare back in 2009, it was Levin, she said, this is Michelle Bachmann saying this, who led the GOP charge against it, posting articles detailing the dangers of socialized medicine on his website and urging his listeners to contact their representative. And in the end, not a single Republican voted for the bill. And she said, he is not a civil disobedience person. He is not crazy. He is not telling people do something that would be negative, but he's very much a motivator and people trust him. Mark understood that once this Obamacare was implemented, dependency is a crack cocaine addiction. Once people get a form of dependency, is it possible to get off? Yes, but it's very difficult and it would change the country forever. So, yeah.
That reminds me of when we were doing the brainwashing of my dad, and they talked about how your brain will become addicted to the spike in anger that Fox News puts out, because the spike of anger it produces that, is it dopamine or serotonin? It produces a chemical that your body starts to rely on. So if you don't watch that, if you don't have that same feeling over and over on a daily basis, you start to you crave it. You want it back in your life.
So there's a little bit more here, and I want to go into it because I think this is really important to understand about him.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit more of this article. It says, what makes him remarkable is that his audience is a fraction of that of his better known colleagues like Hannity or Limbaugh. He speaks, one former Bush administration official said, to the door knockers and the envelope stuffers. In other words, if you wonder how come a little-known fringe right-wingers are able to knock off establishment Republicans again and again, it has a lot to do with the fact that Levine sends them there. To this crowd, Hannity touts the GOP line too religiously, and Limbaugh is too much of a global celebrity whose radio show is as likely to veer into pop culture and news of the weird as it is to talk about the political situation. Levin is single-minded and relentless. And then they talked about this, I thought was really important. So he started out, being a guest for Limbaugh. Mm-hmm. And then Hannity discovered him and stuck him with the nickname, The Great One. So he used to fill in for Hannity when he was away until Phil Boyce, Hannity's producer, offered him a chance to have his own show on WABC in New York on Sundays. But there was only one catch. There was no money in the budget to pay him. So Boyce says, I figured he'd slam the phone down. He added, a fire breather to go against Michael Savage. Levin worked for free for 14 months, routinely beating Savage when Boyce figured it was time for him to go national. So here's why I want to bring that up.
Yeah.
I don't think he's motivated by money. He worked for free for 14 months doing this.
That kind of makes me wonder, is he just another privileged white guy who was able to work for free?
I don't
know.
Place? I will say that one of the reasons I looked up Rush Limbaugh's net worth earlier was because I do see Mark Levine's net worth now is $5 million. Okay.
Right.
Which, I mean, isn't bad, right? But when you compare it to Rush Limbaugh, it's almost nothing.
Right.
And this is where I think Mark Levine is dangerous. He believes what he's saying is correct.
Yeah.
And this doesn't seem to be a gimmick for like ratings or money like it is with Rush. Like, I really think Rush Limbaugh knows that what he's saying is just complete. He's definitely conservative, but he knows that the things that he's saying are utterly ridiculous. It's for ratings. It's for money. He wants that $87 million a year.
Right.
Mark Levine will work for free if he had to in order to get his message out.
You know who that reminds me of?
Us?
No. Well, I mean,
no.
Yeah, we're actually paying money to do it. It reminds me of that very, probably the creepiest person in this administration, Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
Stephen Miller strikes me as the type of person who would be racist for free.
Right.
He would rail against immigrants for free. That would be not a problem.
So the other things about him that, when I hear that, he thinks the U.S. was in the best situation in 1776, like, I just feel like he's probably not a big supporter of women's rights or any sort of like equality, like, for people of color or anybody who's not a white male. Like, if you're thinking 1776 was the best time, that's because you're a white male.
Right.
And, like I said, it doesn't seem like he's really motivated by money. So I went to his website, and I went to it the other day it was on September 20th. So that's kind of the page I bookmarked. And it said, so on Friday, his show, it kind of goes through it. So, and then it has some links down at the bottom. So he has a link from the Wall Street Journal. And whatever you think of the Wall Street Journal, yes, it's conservative, but it is a legitimate news source. Like, they have editorial processes. They use journalistic standards. We might think they're jerks, but it is.
I do think that they're jerks.
But it is a legitimate news source. You don't routinely see, fake news from the Wall Street Journal. And then he also has a link here from NPR. Again, that's actually a very good news source. Like, NPR is one of the least biased news sources that you can have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he has a link from Yahoo News, which is the link is fine. And then he has one from the Federalist. So,
I mean, why you gotta go all the way to the Federalist, man?
Right? So it's not, the thing is that he'll support his arguments with legitimate news sources, but then he'll throw in the opinion that kind of sways it too. So in looking at it, you're almost thinking like, well, yeah, he's using these legitimate news sources. He is talking about things that are happening. Everything that he's talking about is actually happening. But the spin is almost so subtle on the face value. So let me read you this. So it says on Friday's Mark Levine show, Joe Biden obstructed justice by interfering with the Ukrainian government investigation into his son's business dealings and threatened to withhold the foreign aid if the prosecutor wasn't fired. What? And it says, then the next sentence says, the Wall Street Journal is still pushing the pseudo event that the media has been pushing this week. The claim is that President Trump had a conversation with the Ukrainian government about investigating potential wrongdoings by former Vice President Biden's son, Hunter, and his involvement with the Ukrainian gas company. Biden, of course, forced the hands of the Ukrainians to fire the Ukrainian state prosecutor and that was investigating a money trail that led to Hunter Biden. Then, despite Speaker Pelosi saying that a sitting president should be able to get impeached, the reality is different. It would be an impossible burden on the American people if a single prosecutor could decide to, in effect, reverse the results of a national election. Anyway, it's going on in a weird thing there. So I looked into the Biden stuff, right? Because that's going on right now anyway. So I thought it was kind of funny. So basically he's saying that like the Wall Street Journal is pushing a pseudo event. No, they're not. headline is Trump repeatedly pressed Ukraine president to investigate Biden's son. That's the Wall Street Journal link that he has. So I looked into this whole Joe Biden.
Which Trump admitted to doing.
Right.
He admitted to asking them to look into Joe Biden's son. I mean, he admitted that with his words.
So I have an NPR article up from September 24th, which is today, and that we're recording. And it says, what were the Bidens doing in Ukraine? 5 questions answered. So it just kind of goes through it. So basically, Joe Biden, as the vice president, was tasked with working with Ukraine by President Obama. And he took a lot of trips over there and worked very closely with that government.
Do you know if that was when parts of the Ukraine and Chechnya were being annexed by Russia right around the time of the Olympics?
Yeah, so this was when a pro-Western president, Petro Poroshenko, took over. So this is so Ukraine had a revolution in February 2014 when the pro-Russian president was ousted, and then the pro-Western president took over. Obama's administration was prepared to work with the new government, and Biden was tasked with being the point man. Okay. So then in the spring of 2014, as Joe Biden begins his trips to Ukraine, Hunter took a position on the board of the country's largest private gas company, Burisma. I'm probably saying that wrong. And so he was reportedly paid up to $50,000 a month. So the question of a possible conflict of interest with Hunter Biden profiting in a country where his father was actively working with the government was raised publicly at the time. Joe Biden said he followed government ethics regulations and his son was a private citizen who made his own decisions. And also, the Obama administration actually supported an investigation into the gas company because the owner was close to the ousted president and they had both fled the country. So, it's basically like now Trump and Rudy Giuliani are, pushing that there was signs of wrongdoing, but there's never been any evidence of illegal actions. Multiple fact checks have called Trump's accusations of corruption by the Bidens misleading. And so this whole thing about the prosecutor, right? So Joe Biden, in one of his many trips and working with them, he basically was pushing for loans to be available for the Ukraine up to $1 billion. And they had a very corrupt prosecutor, and Joe Biden said he's got to go. And they said, yep, we did it. No problem. And they were like walking out to a conference, a press conference to announce this loan deal. And Joe Biden was like, look, if you don't get rid of this prosecutor, we're not going to give you the loans. And they said, oh, you're not the president. You can't make that decision. And he said, call the president. And he was like, we're not giving you these loans if you don't get rid of this prosecutor. And so he said, I leave in 6 hours. You have a decision to make. And so they fired the prosecutor and they brought in somebody who did a much better job. So there is a link in this article, the NPR article, to the transcript where Joe Biden says this and talks about it. And I kind of read through it. I don't have the mental capacity to understand this. So this was from the Council on Foreign Relations, and it was the Foreign Affairs issue launch with former Vice President Joe Biden. This was Tuesday, January 23rd, 2018. They are talking about things that I cannot wrap my head around. I mean, this is world events all tied up in oil and Russia and Ukraine and economies. And I mean, when people say, oh, the vice president doesn't do anything, no, they do. When reading this.
Yeah. And that was a really tricky time because this was one of the first, if I remember correctly, this was one of the first places that was basically saying, no, Russia, we're over here on our own. And that was right. after.
Yeah, I think
it was after right. Russia had killed, I don't remember his name now, but remember they killed a guy with that crazy substance, and remember he had boils all over his face. Like they kept using that substance on a couple of different like ex-spies, and people were like, oh, Russia's not playing around. Right. That's right. We were at Cold War with them for a really long time. And then the Ukraine, it was like this whole thing started to happen all over the world where people, different countries started to, the Arab Spring happened. And then Ukraine was like, us too. Right. And they were like, we're going to leave. And they sort of separated themselves off. And Chechnya was this area. And Russia had come in and sort of taken Chechnya. And I feel like all of that was around the same time. Because I remember they had the Olympics there. Oh. And I was like, what are you doing?
So on this, it says, so they were discussing the article. So co-authors Joe Biden and Michael Carpenter discussed the article, How to Stand Up to the Kremlin, Defending Democracy Against Its Enemies. So, this, when you read through this and you start to get an idea of how much was going into what he was doing and everything, and the fact that his son had gotten a job in the country, it doesn't even, there's nothing about it that's like, to boil it down to say that Joe Biden wanted this prosecutor fired over his son's company being investigated, which isn't even true. Like, none of that is true. It is such, when you actually think about what was going on and why he wanted that prosecutor gotten, fired and for them to hire somebody else. It wasn't that he didn't want somebody investigated. He just wanted somebody who wasn't like, evil, I guess, or
right.
Anyway, it's insane when you think about it. So there's definitely, when I was reading that on the Mark Levine show page, he's definitely pushing his propaganda and his version of things. And even though he was a never Trumper before, he really has come around. He voted for Trump and he has become very pro-Trump issues. So,
I'm so glad.
So,
because no one else was on Trump's side. It's good that he's there.
Yeah, so great. So, I don't want to go too much longer because we're getting a little long here, but that is Mark Levine in a nutshell and why he's dangerous and why he is on our fake news family tree.
Jeez. Well, he sounds like a winner.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, it sounds like he's a little sapling branch that's really trying to make its way into one of those thick branches, but I don't know.
Just so you know, in case you're interested, he's got a ton of books out, so you're...
Of course he does. So does Rush Limbaugh, that weirdo. He makes like kids' books now.
He's got all these books. So, if you're ever needing a book to read, Kelly,
no,
and you want to gouge your eyes out.
Yeah. Feel free. I have so many better books to read than anything that's written by a crazy white man.
I think I would read children's books over these books. But yeah.
There's tons of good children's books. I can recommend a few. You probably know more already. You've got kids.
Anyway, well, let's get into our jams and let our listeners go and wrap this up here for today. And then we'll be back in 2 weeks with 2 more branches of this family tree. Sounds good. Okay.
Unfortunately, this family tree is pretty big.
We're going to be doing this until we're 90. Okay, I think it's my turn to go first this week.
It's not. I just checked to make sure. It's my turn to go first.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I just checked just to make sure because I was like, I don't remember. Funny. And I was like, I'll just go to our website, Podcast Fake News, and I'll check. In case you're looking for us, it's podcastfakenews.com. Okay, so my jam of the week, you're going to be so shocked. It is not a book this week. I know. So
I just got really nervous that for some reason we were going to do the same jam because I'm not doing a song.
So
I just freaked out for a second. I was like, oh my God, what if we do the same thing?
No, mine is actually a song for one of the first times. So these past few weeks have been really awful. Just there's been so much. I mean, it's not personal. Right. It's just there's so much going on in the world. There's so much going on with storms. I have family in Florida, so I was very worried about it. I've also got family in Texas, so I worry about Texas and the flooding that's going on there. There's so much. And then I have these little beacons of hope like Greta, and I'm going to say Thunberg. I don't think that's right. I've also heard Thunberg, which sounds like it's probably more correct. I'm sorry I say your name wrong, but Greta, I think you're awesome.
She is. And honestly, there's been a ton of fake news about her, and it's been really pissing me off.
Yeah, me too. Don't attack kids, guys. Just don't. Attack ideas, not people, and certainly not children.
The worst one I saw, and this one just made me so angry. I think I stabbed a pancake. They put up a photo of a child with fetal alcohol syndrome and put her picture next to it, and were insinuating that she has fetal alcohol syndrome. And I was like, oh, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, Laura Ingraham put up one where it was her and a picture of a Nazi youth, which was also really disgusting and made me want to throw my phone, but that would prove nothing to her. I just told her she's a pile of garbage and I moved on with my life.
Well, anyway, let's get to our jams.
Let me get to the jams. So there's just been so much going on that the thing I do when I need to have a release is I will listen to Amanda Palmer and I will have a really good cry.
Okay.
There's something about her voice that it's so emotional and it's so raw that it takes me to this place. And she has a brand new album out and her brand new song is beautiful. And it's a lot about Hurricane Harvey. It's a lot about climate change. That's one of the reasons that I brought it up. There's also just some stuff about internet politics and how we fight with each other online and we don't really listen to each other. And there's all these different things that I feel like she touches upon. And the song is called, what is the song called? It's called Drowning in the Sound. And the video just came out recently and she ended up giving a bunch of money to the Texas Diaper Bank, helping people who were affected by Hurricane Harvey. And I love her. I think that she's a pure musician's musician. She is in it for all the right reasons. Oh, nice. She really just wants to create art in whatever shape. And she always promotes as many people as she can. And I just think she's great. She's married to my favorite author.
Oh,
I mean, I have so many positive things to say about her, but she's fantastic. The song is really fantastic. All of her songs are fantastic, but this one in particular is really nice and really good. If you need a good cry, she's a good person to listen to.
Perfect. I always need a good cry. Awesome. I will definitely check it out. Nice. Well, my jam of the week is a TV show, and this is an oldie. I've actually didn't watch it when it came out, and that I am horrified about now that I'm watching it. But I have been watching Parks and Recreation.
Oh my gosh!
And to say that I am obsessed with Parks and Recreation is probably an understatement.
Oh, I get it. 100%. It's one of my favorite shows.
I am so in love with Leslie Knope. I just am like, yep, she's amazing. There's
Audrey Plaza is my favorite person in the world.
Actually, you were saying
I love Leslie Knope. I love Audrey Plaza.
I just was trying to think. You were saying something earlier, and I was laughing to myself because I was wanting to say, "Oh, like April on Parks and Rec." I'm like everything in my life right now. I'm like, comparing with Parks and Rec. So, this show is just incredible. Like they did an amazing job. I'm almost on the last season already, so I've been.
Oh, so you've already gotten through Treat Yourself.
Oh yeah. I've gotten through Treat Yourself.
Valentine's Day. I mean, it's had an effect on culture, for sure.
Definitely. I now understand what Cones of Dunshire is. Like all these things. And it was so funny because I was always like seeing these memes from it. And I was like, you know what? I just need to watch this show. This is ridiculous. Like I am like sharing memes from the show and I'm almost like a fraud here. Like I don't,
Jenny Slate is fantastic in that show as well. I love her so much.
Everybody.
I need money. Money, please. She's so great.
Who is that? Because I don't know if I've seen it.
Oh, no, you've definitely seen her. It's Henry Winkler's daughter.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Sorry. Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
I think is her name. Yeah, in the show.
Her.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot her name is Mona Lisa. I haven't seen it forever, but yeah, her and her brother are fantastic.
So annoying, but perfect. Yeah. So definitely, if you haven't seen Parks and Rec, I mean, just do yourself a favor and go watch it. And if you have seen it, do yourself a favor and just rewatch it because it is literally bringing me life right now. Like, I'm a little sad that I'm getting to the last season because I don't know what I'll do when it's done. But I'm going to make a confession. I've also never watched The Office.
You know what? I know that there's a lot of people who really like The Office. I did like it for a little bit, but I mean, I didn't make it. I mean, I don't even think I made it to when the main guy left. And I'm blanking on his name, but Michael Scott, the guy who plays Michael Scott. I don't even think I made it until he left. I just kind of fell off with it. But I mean, that was like 6 years in or something like that. So I didn't make it super duper far or toward the end. But a lot of people love
there's
it.
just a couple of these shows that are like so in our culture now that I didn't watch just because I stopped kind of watching TV as it was happening. And so Community is another one that I was thinking I should go back and watch. So
you should definitely watch Community. Yeah. Community is fantastic.
Yeah. So there's a couple of these shows that I want to go back and watch. And
I will say that Community, when everyone's talking about us being on the darkest timeline, that's a reference to Community. Because there's a whole thing where they're like, oh no, we messed up the timeline and now we're in the darkest timeline. And it gets really into it. You're like, oh yeah, that's where we are. And there's an episode, like a Pillow Fort episode, that is one of the most perfect episodes of TV I've ever seen.
I did read an article, and honestly, it was an article about how when the show's creators really kind of messed with one of the writers and like made her life miserable. But they were talking about this, like how she felt like she got better treatment from him because he was like in love with her. And even though they weren't dating, like all this stuff, but they were talking about how this writer is really, really good. And they were like, she was newer, but she also wrote this amazing episode where it's something to do with like Law and Order and all this stuff. And they're like, it's this amazingly perfect episode. So I kind of was interested in going back and watching it because it does sound like there's definitely some really good writing in that show.
There's a couple of seasons where the main creator isn't on it and they don't have as good of episodes, but I still think that they're all pretty good. And I mean, Donald Glover is in it.
Oh yeah.
I would honestly say you could probably stop watching when Donald Glover leaves.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll keep that in mind.
It's not the end of the show, but it doesn't get better after that. Okay. That's for sure. So if you wanted to stop it there, you could. That's my advice about Community is that if you wanted to stop it there, there's a lot of like back and forth on the internet that would say that you could stop it there.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, if you want to stop, if you don't want to stop listening to us, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Podcast Fake News. Gmail, podcastfakenews@gmail.com, and check out our blog at podcastfakenews.com where we post all of our episodes and talk about what they're about. So anything else? Is that it?
I don't think so. I think it's just time for us to roll out and maybe go to bed.
Well, don't forget, till next time, spread jam.
not lies.